for the WYFA, and Blaine will be speaking more about Boyd Stadium at Simplot Park in just a few minutes. Should be noted that Simplot Park currently has 2 lit diamonds, one for baseball and one for softball. Those are 2 of the 3 lit diamonds in the City of Brandon, and it's allowed for the Brandon Minor Baseball Association to initiate their highly successful Friday Night Lights program, which draws teams from throughout Western Manitoba and the Parkland regions. Simplot Millennium Park will see more than 1,100 users on a weekly basis during our peak times in the spring and summer beginning next year. Brandon Minor Baseball Association set a record with 420 registered players in 2017. That's an increase of about 200 kids over the past 5 years. Westman Youth Football had just over 300 registered players this past year. And the Westman Orthodox Softball League and Brandon Slow Pitch League rent 3 to 5 diamonds per night at the park, adding another 400 adult users. Now, those numbers are actual participants at the park. It doesn't include parents, grandparents, and other spectators that frequent the park during the summer. The past 15 years, Simplot Millennium Park has been home to 30 Baseball Manitoba Championships, 3 Baseball Manitoba qualifier tournaments, 1 Baseball Canada National Western Championship, 5 Softball Manitoba Championships, and 1 Western Canadian Softball Championship. Each one of these events brought 10 to 12 teams to the City of Brandon for at least a weekend, if not longer, resulting in numerous economic spin-offs for our community. None of these events were possible to have been held in Brandon prior to the park being built. All of these events enhance our community's long-established national reputation as a prime host site. And as noted, Simplot Park will be host for the Baseball Canada 2018 DQ National Western Championship this coming August. We also have our eye on being a host site for a combined Western Canadian Baseball Championship in 2019 and are hoping to bid for a Baseball Canada Bantam Championship for 2021 or 2022. We would also welcome the opportunities to submit a joint bid with the Ashley Neufeld Softball Complex for a Softball Canada Championship at some point in the next 5 years. Just to give Mayor and Council a brief idea of our finances, currently our revenue budget for this coming year, 2018, is approximately $55,000, $38,000 in user fees, including $22,500 from Brandon Minor Baseball, $12,000 from the Orthodox Softball League, $3,500 from the Brandon Slow Pitch League. We anticipate, again, to be able to secure close to $7,000 in student employment grants through the Green Team program and HRGC, $5,000 from a City of Brandon Grants Review, and an additional $5,000 in miscellaneous revenue. Our expenses consist of approximately $20,000 for payroll for park management and employees, $6,000 for insurance, $8,000 for utilities such as hydro, septic service, and City of Brandon water, $10,000 for repairs and maintenance, and of course close to $7,000 for property taxes. We are looking at ways to reduce our expenses, including reassessing our insurance needs. We strongly feel the most offensive expense we have on an annual basis is property taxes. We feel that money would be better served being put back into the facility. As you can see, for the coming year, and has been the case for several years, we are in a break-even scenario. The facility is beginning to show its age and in need of some operational and capital upgrades. This is a list of some of the projects we feel need to be undertaken over the next few years in order to keep the park in prime condition and capable of not only being home to Brandon Minor Baseball, but being able to continue to attract provincial and national events. Most certainly, some of these projects will need to be undertaken before August of 2018 in order to prepare the facility for the Baseball Canada DQ 13U National Western Championship. Jim Baba, the Executive Director of Baseball Canada, toured the park earlier this fall and recommended a number of these upgrades to the facility. I'd like to now turn things over to Blaine Moroz, President of the Westman Youth Football Association, for an update for his organization and on the Boyd Stadium at Simplot Park project.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks for the time, gentlemen. I'd just like to give you a quick update. It won't be as long as Bruce. Phase 1 construction is 90% complete. Our fields are in. All that we have left to do is install the goalposts, pin and line the fields, and we're set for play next spring. We're very proud to brag that both fields were built with 100% recycled material. We did some exploratory digging outside the fence line, and we found 14 inches of usable material that we did use to shape the fields. We figured it'd save the project approximately $25,000 in fees to bring that material in, so we're very proud of that. Phase 1 funding is 70% complete. We have, through direct donations and corporate commitments, fundraised over $163,000 since May. We've also paid out $110,000 towards the project to ensure that we're at the stage that we're at. We have submitted a letter for request in August for funding help in the amount of $300,000 from the Minister of Municipal Affairs, Honourable Jeff Wharton, to the New Building Canada Plan's Small Community Fund, or a straight donation from the province itself. I've received confirmation they have our request, and Brandon East MLA Len Eastlefson is helping us with that. We will be reapproaching council this year for a request and the funding help in the form of $100,000 cash and $50,000 in-kind services support from the city. The monetary funding will be applied to the cost of the septic system and plumbing for the clubhouse, which we feel will be the real stable of the facility itself. Any remaining balance will be applied to the concrete foundation of the clubhouse. The in-kind portion will be used for weather shelters and our picnic and rest areas as we see around Brandon, and any remaining balance might be used to help us construct a windbreak so we can just kind of stay out of the elements a little bit. Moving forward into 2018, we anticipate fundraising will continue, thus keeping us on track with our construction and funding schedules. We're confident that we'll come out if Phase 1 funding will be paid in full by April 18th, 2018, and we'll be immediately beginning Phase 2 construction as weather and planning permits. We've made a change in our plans. We're going to put the clubhouse in Phase 2 so that we can actually have a solid home and a foundation for the park to grow, and then that allows us to open up revenues for rentals. From those revenues, we can apply those to Phase 3 of the funding to help finish the park off, so it just kind of helps itself along as it goes. We as a league are very grateful to finally have the opportunity to have our own home and build a 5-star facility for field sports in Brandon. Upon completion, Simplot Millennium Park will become a destination tournament facility that will be second to none. We hope we can count on the city to continue this support of the community project like this to keep Brandon the amazing city it is. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Blaine. And with the addition of Boyd Stadium at Simplot Park, it should be noted that Simplot Park is now the only non-city operated multi-user facility in the city of Brandon. In addition to what Blaine had talked about and to complete Boyd Stadium, here's some of the really a 5-pronged plan to try and fund on the baseball, softball side of Simplot Millennium Park moving forward. Our plans are try to secure $100,000 in capital funding through the Accommodation Tax Fund to complete some necessary upgrades for the upcoming Western Championship. That, of course, would be in addition to funds supplied to Boyd Stadium. City of Brandon to support SMP financially or through gift-in-kind services. For example, we anticipate we could save some $10,000 to $12,000 per year if the city would agree to provide some grass cutting services at the park. We're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of either gift-in-kind or cash and $20,000 a year for a 5-year span. Find a way to eliminate or reduce our property taxes at the facility. Generate further user group revenue streams, either through more user groups like Westman Ultimate or the Cricket Club. Diamond 2 on the southeast corner of the facility could be converted to other uses. We also have a large segment of land at the park that could be further developed for other uses. And canvass the Brandon business community for financial support through sponsorship opportunities. We think that might be feasible, but we worry that we could step on some toes with the continued fundraising efforts for Boyd Stadium, the Ashley Neufeld complex, and potentially the new outdoor sports complex the city's previously been involved with. I want to thank Mayor and Council for your time and the opportunity to present this to you. Look forward to continuing to work with you to ensure that one of Brandon's primary youth recreational facilities continues to be viable in our community.
Thank you very much, both of you gentlemen, both fabulous projects in our community. We'll open up the floor for questions from councillors, starting with Councillor Harwood.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you to Bruce. Could you go back, Bruce, to the capital improvements? And you had a list there, and I'm just wondering if the list that you have, is it in any specific order? And
some is and some isn't. It's more of a general list of what we believe needs to be done in the facility over the past or for the next 5 years. Some of this has actually been done. The underground sprinkler system for Diamonds 1, 5, and 7 was actually installed in the fall. Some of this is requested from Baseball Canada to be done prior to the event in August, including the enclosure of the bullpens and dugouts on the 2 diamonds that will primarily be used. The grass infields on the 2 diamonds that will be used need to be replaced. So those are things that we think are the more immediate things, and the others are more longer term.
Okay, good, thank you.
And Councillor Reggio?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question for each of the gentlemen. First of all, for Blaine. Originally, the fields were going to be in the new soccer complex, but obviously that's not the case. So can the football fields, would they be made available to soccer if needed?
We're starting to find, we have to watch what we do with these fields. From year 0 to year 4, we have to really make sure that the fields mature as they can be. What we have now is we have fields set, but we have to really be very diligent with how we move our practices from a league so that we don't wear on any spot of the grass, and maintenance is going to be the absolute key over the next 3 years. We reach out to user groups like the Ultimate Disc Group because their numbers are a little bit lower and they do spread out a little further across. So just for the first 4 years, what we really have to make sure is that we haven't really kind of shot ourselves in the foot per se by being so diligent with our planning and making sure that these fields, we want these fields, we're building a facility to last generations and generations. And, in regards to football being inclusive in the first field sport facility, we kind of had to get our way into that process. The first 4 plans that we did see, football wasn't on them, cricket wasn't on them. So we kind of had to bring ourselves into the fold, and then through our own diligence we just kind of went out and did our own thing, and this is where we end up today. So we're very proud of the process that we took.
And my second and final question to you, Bruce. It's on private land, and of course that's been one of the key stumbling blocks from what I understand. Would your group be adverse at looking at a memorandum of understanding or a triple P agreement, whatever fancy term you want to call? We'll get both sides together and see if that's possible.
I know in some conversations that I particularly had with City Treasurer Dean Hammond back in the spring, one of the things he talked about was that the city does have the ability to contract organizations to provide services. And for me, when you're providing a recreational facility for some 1,100 citizens, that's a service I think that the city can get behind. The fact that we're on private land seems to be something that has, I think, lingered and been a X against us for so many years, and we just simply don't understand why that is. It's a recreational facility just like anyone else. The fact that it's actually on Coke's land, that they were kind enough, Simplot was at that time, to donate the land to us and build a facility for us, I think should be a check mark for them and not a negative for us moving forward.
Just as a follow-up to that, Your Worship, if the city were to enter into an agreement with you, what are the conditions? Can Coke come to you guys tomorrow and say, we want the land back next month or next year?
Well, as I mentioned, we do have, both sides have an opt-out clause in the lease, which is 6 months' notice.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and Councillor Chaboyer?
Thank you, Worship. Through the presenter, I think Councillor Reggio was asking a similar question to what I was, is what have you done to see how you can eliminate or reduce your property taxes? And you mentioned you met with Mr. Hammond. Have you also looked at provincial assessment to look at the classification of the land, or is there other avenues to, to take that footprint of land to somehow categorize it in so it could be either exempt or reduced taxes?
We met with MLA Len Isselson last week to talk about this very subject, to see what they could do at the provincial government level. Mayor Crest was also present at the meeting to discuss this. The one thing that I discovered, I guess, as I kind of prepared for this presentation, is that the entire amount that we are paying in property taxes goes entirely to the municipality. We do not pay a cent of tax for school tax or education tax at our facility.
Okay, thanks for that.
And Councillor Parker?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Lubke, this tails on to Councillor Reggio's comment maybe, but I was just wondering if you've had discussion with Coke Fertilizer about extending the lease, if that may eliminate some of the concern.
I haven't personally. I know Blaine met with Coke, I believe, in the spring, right?
I've been pursuing this for 2 years through Coke. I was in contact with a man named Chris Williams. He's the head of the legal department for Coke International out of Wichita, Kansas. Basically, just to quote unquote, if it's inside the fence line, Coke's not worried about it. We had the concern about liability, about putting up a parking fence or perhaps a perimeter fence just to keep the liability off of Coke's property for anybody that might stumble on there and something might happen. They have absolutely zero concerns about that whatsoever. They give us a good graces to do what we can with the land. We've never had an issue at all from Coke. They've been absolutely nothing but supportive through this whole endeavor. And we're just basically told as long as we don't have to alter what the lines are that are on there right now, just kind of have at her.
If I could, I'm thinking more in terms of the length of the lease. So I think you said it expires at 2030. So for somebody to jump into a long-term program, 10 or 11 years isn't exactly long-term in some of those issues. So is there an appetite from them to extend the lease to 2050 or 40 or whatever the case is? However, with a 6-month opt-out clause, I'm not sure that gives great comfort to anybody anyway, and that might be some of the concern.
Haven't had that discussion with them.
Thank you.
Okay, I didn't see any other hands up, but Councillor Fawcett, go ahead.
Yeah, Kurt, thank you through your worship for the presenters. Great programs out there. I think that everything is going really well out there. The City Council will be looking at all recreation kind of going forward on all this, so we'll be addressing some of your concerns. But Bruce, you've been there, with it for a long time. Did Simplot pay the taxes?
No.
Simplot?
The only time it was ever paid by anybody besides the park committee was when Simplot sold it to Coke. We had some arrears in tax at that time, and those had to be taken care of before the sale was completed. And I believe either Simplot or Coke, one of the two, paid the taxes at that point. That was back in 2006.
Okay, yeah, just looking for some history on that. And I actually did want to comment how much I enjoyed having Loreggio and Lupke going back and forth on that. I actually shut my eyes when they did it so that I could really take it in.
Any other questions? Looks like we got it all covered. Again, two very excellent presentations. Thank you very much to both.
Thank you.
Councilor Reggio.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the presentation by Bruce Lupke and Blaine Moros with respect to Simplot Millennium Park and Boyd Stadium be received, and I also have an amendment that the city...
You don't have to make an amendment, just make it part of your first
and
motion.
that the city look at negotiating a memorandum of understanding with the Park Committee.
Okay, seconder, please. Councilor Harwood. Whoever wishes to speak?
Briefly, Your Worship, we've heard there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of kids using that facility, and since I've been on council, we've been talking about building a soccer field, and we're still at the planning stage. So if we were to not have this facility, who knows where these kids would be playing ball and football, if they'd be playing at all. So I'm in favor of, let's see if we can negotiate a triple P agreement, a memorandum of understanding, whatever fancy term you want to use. And it's there. It's not going to cost us anything to sit down at a table and talk to them.
I think your term memorandum of understanding is the best one. That wouldn't really be a triple P per se, but we do have memorandums of understanding like this with other facilities, so that's probably the correct term. Seconder wish to speak, Councilor Harwood?
Your Worship, Councillor Reggio summed it up quite well.
Other comments, questions? Seeing none, mover wish to close?
No, Your Worship.
Call for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
A presentation from Elizabeth Saptiak regarding the annual update from the Brandon Downtown Development Corporation.
And welcome.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to Council this evening. My name is Elizabeth Saptiak, and I am the Executive Director of the Brandon Downtown Development Corporation. I would also like to welcome our Board Executive, who is in attendance this evening, our Board Chair, Steve McMillan, Vice Chair, John Zeke, and Secretary Treasurer, Michael Mandel. Councillor Chris Desjardins is also a member of our Board of Directors, and Mayor Rick Kress sits as an ex officio member. I would like to begin by providing a brief recap of our council tour, which took place on Tuesday, December 5th. Thank you to those members of council who were able to join us that evening. I realize that it is a busy time of year, and understandably not every member of council was able to attend. Please know that we do intend to offer a second tour for our provincial representatives, and to any member of council who was unable to attend on the 5th but who is interested in attending, you will certainly be welcome. So once we've secured a date with our provincial colleagues, we will certainly let you know and invite you along. We started our tour at 1031 Rosser Avenue, the historic Fraser Crest block, which is now home to skin clinics and Fraser Sneath Coffee. Council was able to tour the completed Phase 1 and the proposed Phase 2, which includes an expansion of the skin clinic and onto the second and third floors with the creation of a full-service day spa. Stop number 2 was 121 10th Street, which is now home to Pirouette Activewear, a locally owned dancewear, skatewear, and swimwear retailer. Stop 3 was 29 10th Street, a 25,000 square foot redevelopment project. Stop 4 was 829 Rosser Avenue, site of Prairie Lofts redevelopment project, which is an 8-unit residential upper story conversion, which previously sat vacant for decades. It sits on top of 10,000 Villages and Innomar Strategies. Next, we stop briefly outside of the Art Gallery of Southwestern Manitoba. The AGSM is considering an improved entrance on the north side of the building on Rosser Avenue, just west of 7th Street. Renovation costs are estimated between $500,000 and $800,000 and would bring a wow factor to this stretch of Rosser Avenue. Our final stop was 637 Princess Avenue, home to Prairie Firehouse Restaurant. We were welcomed with food and drink in the former hayloft, which is now the private dining room. Council was given the opportunity to tour the second and third floors of this historic building and was able to hear from restaurant owner Anna Jima about her redevelopment vision for these currently underutilized floors. Anna would like to develop a boutique hotel on the second floor and an event space on the third floor. She already hosts a significant number of events at her restaurant, and she would like to continue to hosting weddings and parties while at the same time keeping her restaurant open. Having a separate event space would allow her to do so. The cost to undertake subsequent phases of redevelopment of this property are prohibitive. And if Anna is to move forward, she will need the support of the Brandon Downtown Development Corporation in order to do so. I'd now like to focus on a selection of the redevelopment projects in greater detail. Skin clinics moved into this formerly vacant space in 2014. The opening of Fraser Sneath Coffee followed in September of 2015. Phase 1 of this project represents an unprecedented return on investment for the City of Brandon. For every dollar invested by our organization, we were able to leverage $12 of private sector investment. Private investment into this property to date in terms of redevelopment is $750,000. Prairie Firehouse Restaurant opened its doors in the former Central Fire Station in December of 2015. The restaurant draws a significant number of visitors into downtown, both locally and from abroad. In November 2017, the restaurant attracted 4,100 visitors, compared to 3,500 visitors at the same time last year. The restaurant sales are also up by $30,000 when compared to the same time last year. This matters because when we spend at local business, more money stays in our local economy. According to the local frequency, for every $1 million in revenue, independent retail stores and restaurants recirculate $450,000 back into the local economy compared to only $170,000 for chain competitors. To recap, the Brandon Downtown Development Corporation invested more than $80,000 into Phase 1 of this redevelopment project. With this funding, we were able to leverage more than $800,000 of private sector investment. We facilitated the redevelopment of space, which resulted in the establishment of a locally owned independent restaurant. All things being equal, more of the revenue from this independent business is recirculated into the local economy when compared to a chain competitor. The redevelopment project at 121 10th Street was completed in 2016 after the building sat vacant for years. In order to make this project feasible, we provided funding assistance through our redevelopment grant to the property owner and through our rent abatement program directly to the business owner. Total investment into this project exceeded $350,000. For every dollar we invested, we were able to leverage just under $5 of private capital investment. Moving on to Prairie Lofts, this project was made possible through a redevelopment grant from our organization and from an upper story residential development initiative directly from the province of Manitoba. For every dollar invested by our organization, we leveraged $4.70 of other investment. That includes both private sector investment and Government of Manitoba investment. 29 10th Street, a 25,000 square foot redevelopment project located on 10th Street between Rosser and Pacific Avenues, tucked in behind the Double Decker Tavern. This building is attracting neat and unique independent businesses into our downtown. To date, the following businesses have signed lease agreements at this property: Chez Angela Bakery and Cafe, anticipated to open winter of 2018. Charleston and Harlow, a luxury soy candle company. Muse Boutique and Bridal Studio, which is moving from its existing location on 18th Street onto the second floor of this downtown building. 2 photographers, a magazine, a hairstylist, and an esthetician. Most of these businesses will be open evenings and on weekends. Our rent abatement program has been paramount in helping to attract businesses into this space. This is a $2.5 million redevelopment project, but our organization's contribution will be provided through rent assistance directly to the independent business owners of this space. The return on investment we will see on this project will truly be incredible. Let's now reference value for money. We've discussed our ability to leverage private sector investment through our grant programs, but another critical spin-off from our investment in downtown is that it leads to increased assessment values, which also leads to higher property taxes collected by both the province and the City of Brandon. To look to a couple of examples, 1031 Rosser Avenue, this redevelopment project was completed in 2014. The increase in assessment from $110,000 in 2014 to $415,000 in 2015. The increase in the municipal portion of property taxes went from $1,400 in 2014 to just shy of $5,000 in 2015. 637 Princess Avenue, this redevelopment project was completed in 2015. The increase in assessment in 2015 was $230,000, and that increased to $648,000 in 2016. In terms of the municipal portion of property taxes, that increased from $2,700 in 2015 to $6,700 in 2016. Some other highlights this past year involve our inclusion in an Expedia.ca article naming downtown Brandon as one of Canada's coolest downtowns. Downtown Brandon does have some tremendous assets, and that was not lost on the authors of this piece. We continue to work with Brandon University on their planned downtown development. We sit on the pre-development steering committee and helped to facilitate the land assembly at this site, which then allowed us to help facilitate the land transactions involving our 3 properties along 9th Street, as well as the former Strand Theatre property on 10th Street. We've also helped to bring new events into our downtown. Earlier today, it was announced that Food Truck Wars will move to downtown Brandon next September. We anticipate that thousands of visitors will flock into our downtown for this event. We anticipate that these visitors will then take advantage of downtown's many unique amenities, including its specialty retail and trendy coffee shops. The positive spin-offs of this event to our local economy should not be underrated. So we need to ask ourselves, what kind of downtown do we want? Do we want a downtown that is full of life and that is open weekends and evenings? Do we want a downtown where we have people on display sitting on patios and where we have active and engaged storefront merchants? Do we want a downtown that is walkable and where being downtown is about the experience and not just about the destination? To get there, which is where we want to be, it takes time, it takes focus, it takes continued prioritization, and it takes continued investment. To that end, on behalf of the Board of Directors, we wish to request from the City of Brandon funding in 2018 for $300,000 so that we may continue to use our grant programs to encourage redevelopment, to attract new and unique businesses into our downtown, and so that we may continue to leverage private sector investment. A vibrant and prosperous downtown contributes to the strength of a city as a whole. Our downtown is authentic, it is dense, and it is walkable. We've come a long way over the past few years, but we still have a ways to go. A downtown is the most visible indicator of community pride. It is either an asset or it's a liability. An effort to recruit new residents, new businesses, new industries, and tourists to our city. Furthermore, a downtown is the visual representation of a community's heritage. The architecture in our core is a physical expression of our history. I truly believe that our downtown can be the neighborhood in Brandon where people come for the experience and where they want to stay. With continued investment from the City of Brandon and continued focus from the Brandon Downtown Development Corporation, I believe we can get there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a very good presentation, Elizabeth, and we'll customarily open up the floor for questions. So anybody stick your hand up and go. Councillor Barry.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Through you to the presenter, thank you very much. It was a great tour. I really enjoyed it, knowing some of those old buildings growing up in Brandon, that to kind of see what life they're taking now. But my question is about your request for $300,000. Under the old Renaissance Brandon model, we used to give $250,000. That was matched by the province. So on your request for $300,000, is that also going to be matched by the province as well?
We were notified in June of this past year that the province had terminated its funding agreement with our organization. Previously, we had entered into a multi-year funding agreement with the province that would have provided long-term funding from fiscal year 2015-16 to 2018-19. Over a 4-year fiscal year period. But unfortunately, we were notified that their funding partnership, as we know it, had been terminated. What that means, we're not sure yet. We continue to work with the province to see whether or not there are any funding opportunities. It's just that that certainty that we had under that multi-year funding agreement no longer exists. In one example, we were advised by provincial administration to make application for a project-specific grant. That was through the Community Places program, and that grant was for Chez Angela Bakery. We made application for an amount of approximately $52,000, and that would have covered 1/4, 25% of total redevelopment costs for that space. We have not yet heard back from the province. We were initially supposed to hear back by end of October. That deadline was then extended to the middle of December, but unfortunately we have not yet heard, so we continue to wait. But to answer your question, it's my understanding that the province will not be funding us in the same capacity as they have in the past.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Other questions? Must have covered it all. Very good. Thank you very much, Elizabeth, and to your board as well for a great year and all the dedication that's put in on the organization on the city's behalf. So thank you very much. Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you, through your worship. I move that the report from Elizabeth Saptiak with respect to the annual update from the Brandon Downtown Development Corporation be received.
Seconder, please. Councillor Cullen. Who wishes to speak?
Very briefly, in that Elizabeth covered it all, and in spite of the news that the province was not matching dollars this year, and this was very challenging for the board and for Elizabeth, they still managed to do some incredible things in the downtown, and we're still seeing a strong return on the investment for the money that the city is putting in. So I'm hoping that we all take that into consideration when we go into budget, that this is money well spent and we're getting incredible return on investment for downtown Brandon.
Thank you. Seconder, wish to speak?
Yes, Your Worship. Just if some of the councillors have not had an opportunity to go on the tour, I recommend that they do that. It was an eye-opener for myself just to see the properties that are there. It's like we're always looking for, something substantial that we can see that we've invested in and things are moving forward. And again, the tour showed that that's exactly what was happening. And there is literally thousands of square feet that are being redeveloped right now in downtown Brandon that you should take a look at. So again, thank you very much for the committee and their work that they've done. And again, very substantial, and you got to go take a look at it yourself, and I highly recommend it.
Thank you. Other councillor, Councillor Loreggio.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. Hopefully, Councillor Desjardins, who's on the committee, can answer this. With the funding cuts to Brandon, were the various organizations in Winnipeg for the downtown development corporations in that city, did they also get a likewise funding cut, or do you know offhand?
Through your worship, yes, and we do believe that we were just put in the same basket, if you will, and so that's why I still think that there's still some potential for other arrangements to be made moving forward with the province. They were cutting and holding their wallet tight to their side here for the last little while, but we have seen them add some funding to the Keystone, and I think that if we allow this to play out, we will see something else come down the road with the province once they recognize and understand what Brandon Downtown Development Corp has been doing and how we're different than Center Venture and things like that.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Or we call the question. Have anything you want to close with, Councillor Desjardins? Going to call for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We'll be seeing that at budget time. Next item, please.
Also under the order of delegations, Your Worship, a presentation from Ron Christensen, the General Manager of the Provincial X of Manitoba, regarding the Display Building 2 restoration project.
Very good. Come ahead.
Good evening, Your Worship and Councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to present again our restoration of Display Building Number 2, better known as the Dome Building at the Keystone Centre. This has become a bit of an annual presentation for me in December to update you on our progress. This year we've made some really significant progress. As people know, the Dome Building was on the top 10 most endangered list of historic sites in Canada in 2009, and with support from the City of Brandon, the province, the federal government, and a huge amount of capital campaign supporters, the provincial exhibition has led the charge to restore this building, and we are very near to having it done. This is a picture that was taken last summer with the sun setting behind this beautiful building on our Keystone Centre grounds. So we've used, since it came last fall, I talked about the potential of this funding. We had asked for the third year of $85,000 from the City of Brandon, the $371,000 from Parks Canada, $300,000 new dollars in our capital campaign, $375,000 from Growing Actions, and $50,000 from the Enabling Accessibility have all been confirmed, and the majority of that money has been spent moving forward to complete the interior development of our building. We've had some challenges over the years. This has been a lot longer process than we had anticipated. Matching grants and the timing of the funds, just by chance, all three levels of government have changed, some of them dramatically. Fiscal year ends, construction seasons. The process has drawn out a lot longer than we intended, and essentially we've had to buy one brick at a time rather than start the process in 2009 or 10 and move it through in a timely manner. So it's got drawn out a lot longer than we had anticipated. What happened there? Newest window feature update is here. Can't be good. But we've had a lot of funding successes. There's over 200 names on our capital campaign list, and that's not including couples that are on there as a Mr. and Mrs. So a breakdown of our funding, and these are approximate numbers. 46% of from the capital campaign and the provincial exhibition of Manitoba. Approximately 7% of the cash funding has come from the City of Brandon, 28% from the Government of Canada, and 19% from the province of Manitoba. We've done a lot of modifying, a lot of changes to our plans to reduce costs at every step of the way where we could. So our timelines we're looking at are sometime in the next months, weeks. We plan to move our offices from downtown on 10th Street back into the Dome Building on the Keystone Centre grounds. And early in the summer of 2018, we should have office space rented out to some tenants. We've had a couple of potential tenants express interest, have a look at the building. We've got a meeting this week to come up with a bit of a plan from our board of directors as to what our options are, what our best plan to rent office space, meeting space to the businesses and not-for-profits in the Brandon area. So some updates on the construction, and I know some of you were in there earlier in the fall when we had a media conference. We built a mezzanine level on the west end of the building that will be our boardroom upstairs and some office and meeting room space to rent out to potential tenants. So we've, in a National Historic Site and Provincial Heritage building that is over 100 years old, we've installed water services, a fire suppression system, electrical, high-speed internet, geothermal heat, fire-rated insulation, and a lot of those things weren't even thought of when the building was originally built. So it's really close to our hearts that the modern office space, meeting space that we're able to build in this historic building is a reflection of agriculture, of the city of Brandon, the community of southwestern Manitoba, and our own building. So we've completed just this past fall, we completed a lot of the landscaping. We've installed some very nice patios, walkways leading up to the building. That was in part funded through some of the Parks Canada funding as a heritage site. These pictures were taken just last week. This is standing in the east end of the building, which will be approximately 5,000 square foot learning center, looking down the hallway towards the west end of the building, where the offices of the Provincial Exhibition and other not-for-profit partners will be. The next picture, I believe, is looking from the boardroom upstairs on the mezzanine level. There will be a window looking out over those truss rafters down into that learning center from the boardroom. We took every step of the way. We tried to preserve the heritage look, the heritage feel of the building. We're not about chrome and shiny plastic in this building. So the divide walls for the offices upstairs go where the truss rafters are, and the drywall divide walls have been built as an insert into the truss rafters so that each office or meeting room on each side of that building will have a part of that heritage feel. The fire suppression system you can also see there, and the ducting for the geothermal heat, and they will be as a more or less open design to stay with the heritage feel of the building. My corner office, Daryl Knight sends me a picture of it pretty well every week and asks me when I'm ready to move in, and we're getting very close to being able to do that. So that's where we're at. And the Dome building has been a symbol of the Provincial Exhibition, a symbol of the city of Brandon, and indeed all of southwestern Manitoba. It's been our logo in one form or another for many, many years, and it's a big piece of our identity. So we'd like to express our sincere appreciation to the city of Brandon for the support. And at this point, I would respectfully request that the city of Brandon continue to support this program by contributing a further $25,000 to this project. And I would like to add that the vast majority of the money invested in this building has been spent with local Western Manitoba and Brandon contractors, and therefore reinvested in the community as they pay their local employees, their local people. So it's something we're very proud of, and it's a piece of what we've done all along to try and ensure that the money stays in Brandon. So thank you very much for your previous support, the support we've received at all levels to this point, and we respectfully ask that Council considers continuing this support in the next budget deliberations, and I would open the floor to any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Christensen. Another great presentation tonight. So we'll open up the floor. Councillor Reggio.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Ron. I'm going to think way outside the box here. Recently, the province announced $700,000 for a curling center of excellence training school. At one point, this facility was looked at as a curling museum, Hall of Fame. Curling is a big part of Brandon's history, as you mentioned. The Dome building, Farmers Curl, we can find a tie in there somewhere. So maybe we should have a chat with the provincial government to look at locating it here in Brandon at the Dome building.
And it's, the options for potential tenants are, we're just in the very early stages of exploring where that might go. In the business model put forward since the very start was potential tenants were not-for-profit type, similar organizations. 4-H Manitoba was one, the Manitoba Agriculture Hall of Fame, that type of thing. As the number of years have gone by, the structure of those organizations and of our own, but at this point we are, now that we actually have some walls up and a bit of an idea of what we have to rent out, the tenant discussions are beginning.
Good luck.
And Councillor Patterson next.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the presenter, thank you for coming out tonight. I'm just curious if you could share some of the specifics in terms of this additional $25,000 request. Like what are you hoping that we might be able to support in the new year?
Yeah, I guess the additional support is the request for it comes in lieu of the project still continuing to this point. The other funding sources that have been listed earlier on, those pieces come to the end. We continue on to finish the building. We've got, permit fees. We've got more things to finish up to get ourselves moved in there and open for business. One of the things that we really, I didn't mention is the potential for partnerships with the Keystone Center, having our organization back on the grounds, having that building functional right there on the grounds, I think can only add to the Keystone Center. We've had questions. I've had a couple of phone calls in the last few weeks asking if we were ready to move in, would there be meeting rooms there if people were at Ag Days, if they were. So those pieces of it to add to the inventory of what the Keystone Center has. We have built a great working relationship with the Keystone Center, and where things can go from there, I think, are unlimited.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Christensen? I think we got it covered. Thank you very much, and Merry Christmas, Ron.
Yes, thank you, and to you and council.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson?
I would like to move that the presentation by Ron Christensen, General Manager of the Provincial Exhibition of Manitoba, with respect to an update on Display Building Number 2 Restoration Project, be received.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Parker, mover wish to speak?
No, I'm good, thank you, Your Worship.
Seconder wish to speak?
No, I think we're good.
Any other councillor? Seeing none, we'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
Community question period, Your Worship.
Very good. This next item is a area on the agenda council holds open called question period that public is invited to come forward and speak on any item that is appearing on tonight's agenda, and a total of 15 minutes is allowed for question period if anybody has anything they'd like to add. Always get questioners, so that seems to be the case tonight. So we move on to the next item, please.
The order of committee reports, Your Worship, and I believe we have a verbal report from the Keystone Center.
Very good. Councillor Barry?
Thank you, Worship. I wish to report on behalf of the Keystone Center Board of Directors from this evening. We did have our annual general meeting December 14th last week on Thursday. Another great turnout this year, which is nice to see. That's 2 years in a row. We've had a lot of community members, but more importantly, our stakeholders come out. We had representatives from the City of Brandon and our Treasurer, Dean Hammond. Provincial Exhibition, Ron Christensen was there as well. The Brandon Wheat Kings were at our annual meeting this year. I think that's the first time in a long time we've had representatives from the Wheat Kings. Board members from Ag Days, and who am I missing, Lonnie? I know there was more than that because we had a really good turnout. Province of Manitoba, we had a representative there, so it's nice to have that inclusion from our stakeholders coming out to our AGM and seeing what's happening at the Keystone. It was a great turnout and a good meeting. After that, we actually had our inaugural meeting, and I'd like to welcome 3 new board of directors that we had. 2 provincial appointees were Lori Rodich and Jeff Crystal that were recently appointed to the Keystone Board. And then we had 2 appointees for members at large. One's a returning member, Darlene Paquette, and then a new appointee, sorry, I have to take my glasses off here, Franz Libras was appointed to the Keystone Board. So we have 3 brand new members at the Keystone Board, one returning member as well. And also at that meeting, we also had election for chair and vice chair. We do have a new chair. After 3 years, I stepped down, and I have no regrets. We do have a new chair. His name is Tim Hoare. Tim has been on the board for probably 8 years now, was the chair 4 years ago for 1 year, and then I took over from him. And our new vice chair is none other than Lonnie Patterson. It's going to be sitting there. So that's what's happening at the Keystone Center right now.
Very good, excellent report. But we will open up, and any members of council have questions of Councillor Berry or new Vice Chair Councillor Patterson. Councillor Loreggio.
I will ask Councillor Berry for the final time as he relinquishes his chairmanship. Can you fill us in on the leadership review, where we're at? When can we see some potential changes, if any?
And as I usually do, I will defer that to his worship, as he is one of the members of the leadership group.
Well, I can happily say that we finally got some action. We've got some activity with respect to that. We've had a telephone conference call very recently to deal with some of the board member issues that Councillor Berry did mention, and at least one other piece of business. And so they're sort of engaging, and then now we're talking about the governance model will sort of be next on the agenda. So provinces gotten engaged on the Keystone file, and I think we're going to continue to see more progress there. So, best report I've had for you for quite some time.
It's a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Yeah. And any other questions, Councillor Harwood?
Your Worship, this isn't a question so much as it's a comment through you to Councillor Berry. Thank you very much for all your hard work as chair of the Keystone. At times it's been trying, I'm sure, but a lot of hours and a lot of dedication in that. So thank you very much for service for doing that. And to Councillor Patterson, congratulations on being the incoming vice chair.
Okay. Other questions? Not seeing any, and Councillor Harwood did kind of steal my thunder, and I do want to add to that, though, that we do truly appreciate the service of everybody, but particularly you, Councillor Berry. You were chair for a period of quite a few changes in Keystone, and management change, recruiting a new manager, and other personnel changes, and just a lot going on at the Keystone that you've had to stick handle it through. So we truly do appreciate the effort. I know it's been a lot of long hours on your part. And I know Councillor Patterson will help to pick up the torch and carry on with it. Okay, we won't take a motion yet because we do have another verbal report, I believe. Is that right, Madam City Clerk?
Yes, we have a verbal report from the Poverty Committee, Your Worship.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will try to be brief. Poverty Committee met 2 weeks ago, last week, and I did want to note that the committee unanimously supported the motion coming forward later in our agenda with relation to transit funding. We did have a conversation about this change in provincial policy, and at the committee did pass a motion to endorse the resolution that Councillor Saboris brought forward. I also wanted to mention, and this is further on the work that we're doing to create more of a partnership and a network, potentially a social planning council with different partners in the community who are working on reducing poverty and helping those in poverty. The Poverty Committee has decided to facilitate coordinating a submission to the province of Manitoba on their poverty reduction strategy. So those submissions, they're accepting submissions now until the end of January. And what we talked about was putting together a document that makes local information and data clear to the province. For example, youth homelessness is a challenge that we deal with in our city. As we've heard at the council table a few times, addictions is another challenge that's really top of mind for folks. So the Poverty Committee has agreed to sort of facilitate coordinating ideally what would be a joint submission from different stakeholders in our community, and we'll keep council posted on that as we move forward.
Thank you very much. Again, we'll open the floor to questions, if there are any, on the Poverty Committee report. Seeing none. Before we take a motion to receive the reports, as we always do, are there any other reports that we may not have been aware of? Committee reports. Seeing none, then a motion would be in order to accept the report from the Keystone and the Poverty Committee. If somebody would. Councillor Berry, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
The order of inquiries, Your Worship.
Inquiries, Councillor Parker.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I'd like to ask that administration look into the viability and the financial impact of implementing bi-weekly residential refuge and recycle collection schedules. And while I understand time's tight, if it's all possible to report back to council before budget deliberations begin.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Sage does have an initial response.
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Parker, administration will take this under advisement with a report back to City Council for consideration before budget deliberations. At a minimum, a report will be provided on the history of this issue with as much information possible given the short window before budget deliberations, January 19th and 20th of 2018.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Were there any other, we weren't aware of other inquiries. Once in a while something crops up through the day, so always hold it open. Here there are none. Move on to the next item, please.
The order of announcements, Your Worship.
Announcements tonight. Councillor Reggio.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to make an announcement. I don't know if this is out of line. The organization doesn't know this yet, but I spent the last 3 weeks at the Salvation Army Kettles on the weekends, and I received a phone call this morning from the Salvation Army where they are looking for more volunteers. You've probably heard that there's a great shortfall of volunteers. So I guess my announcement would be, if anyone on City Council, and I'll throw the challenge out to my fellow councillors, or anyone in the City of Brandon listening right now who has a couple of hours over the next few days, to please call the Salvation Army. Unfortunately, I don't have their phone number. They desperately need volunteers to man the kettles, and that funding stays here in Brandon, and it goes to some very worthwhile programs. So hopefully I'm not out of line. And
not out of line at all. I'm glad to hear you say that, Councillor Reggio. Don't always say that to you, but you're not out of line on this one, and certainly I understand they're doing well and certainly on pace to reach their goal, but certainly it's a final push in this last week if they can keep the kettles occupied by volunteers. So certainly it's a very timely announcement, Councillor Reggio, and I'm sure they're easy to find in the book. And thank you for bringing that one up.
Thank you very much.
Other announcements? Seeing none, we can move on to the next item, please.
Under the order of general business, Your Worship, a motion regarding cannabis legalization and regulation.
Councillor Fawcett.
Thank you, through Your Worship, that the province of Manitoba be advised that the City of Brandon intends to allow cannabis to be sold from a retail location situated in the municipality, and further that the City of Brandon reserves the right to change its position on this matter, and that the above response is not binding.
Seconder, Councillor Parker. Whoever wishes to speak.
Thank you, through Your Worship. This is mostly in response right now to where the AMM convention, the Minister of Growth, Enterprise and Trade, stated the government would survey AMM to ask if municipalities would be participating in the province's strategy. And they did want a response by noon, December 22nd, 2017. And this does give us the opportunity to say, yes, we intend to allow, or no, we do not intend to allow. And in this case, it's proposed that we say, yes, we intend to allow. And with even in the survey, it is the understanding our community can change its position on this matter at a later date, and the response above is not binding. So it is just sort of saying we are moving forward with the federal government and provincial government at this point.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the clerk's advice, and although the Councillor Fawcett read it exactly the way it was presented, it's noted to be sold from a retail location situation in the municipality, and there it may be more than one. We won't be, the province is certainly taking the RFP, and we'll be sort of handing out the licenses, and they'll be determining some probably market consideration, and you know what and it seems kind of limiting that we've noted a location, and
What I could suggest, Your Worship, is we could simply say a retail location brackets S.
Is both the mover and the seconder okay with that? Okay. Yeah. Just so council knows it's a relocation or plural. Okay, carry on. Seconder wish to speak, Councillor Parker?
Your Worship, thank you. I think actually this time Councillor Fawcett was actually quite succinct and accurate in presenting that, so I have nothing to add.
Good. Other, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to put a few words on the record. I will be voting in favor of this motion for a few reasons. One, it is very clear that retail cannabis sales will be occurring online after July 2nd, which means that Brandon residents still will be able to purchase this, and I do think that as the second largest city in Brandon, it does make sense that we afford the opportunity for folks to do actual in-person retail in our city. I am a bit frustrated that we are debating this at the council table. I think that the province could have done a lot more homework before kind of throwing this into our laps. But I also think that we want to be a part of that conversation, and we want to be engaged with the province as they are developing policies in relation to retail cannabis. And finally, I just think that people in the city of Brandon already, I think in most cities in Canada, if not all, already purchase and consume cannabis, and right now it's a completely unregulated substance. So as we move into July of next year, it will be something that will be more regulated. Consumers will be able to make more informed choices, and I think that Brandon should be a part of that change that's happening across our country.
And Councillor Harwood was next.
Yes, Your Worship. I will certainly support the motion, but just to clarify for the people watching at home, what we're agreeing to tonight is just in principle that we're going to move ahead with discussions with the province, correct?
Correct. The province has certainly asked. Sort of make no mistake, I know that there'll be some of our citizens won't be especially comfortable with this particular issue, but it's been declared at the federal level that it will become a legal substance throughout the country. And now it's cascaded down to the provinces to take care of the distribution in each province. And our particular province have asked municipalities sort of if they want to be, part of the framework in developing that distribution. So it would certainly seem either we could be in the process and have a say in how it is distributed in our municipality, or we opt out and we will not have a say. We won't be, I think it was in Councillor Patterson's words, part of the conversation. So that's what's really on the table. The province, in its request for the intentions from each municipality, did indicate that the position would not be binding, and so as more information comes together, should our council not feel comfortable in moving forward, we would have the opportunity to change our mind, if you will, and declare that we're wish not to be involved. Part and parcel of the reason that the timing is such, and the timing is short, and it didn't really give us much of an opportunity to have much public conversation within our own municipality, but they have a request for proposals for the retailers and distributors that also closes on December 22nd. I'm sure in assessing those proposals that will come in, obviously the various proposers will be indicating their sort of distribution network, and the province will need to know some indication of whether or not they can be working with these distributors in various municipalities, and so that's the reason that they've put the December 22nd deadline for municipalities' intentions, so it can line up with the closing of the RFPs. So,
and Your Worship, if I might, just the final comment here that, this gets the process started, because as we move through this, when we get into where it's going to be sold in the city, I mean, we're dealing with zoning and locations and all the costs associated with this move to legalization that's coming before us. So
that's correct. So I think we'll see more information. I guess step one is that we're prepared. If this motion passes, we're prepared to be part of the process. Should that be the case, then the next consideration might be specific zoning considerations within our own municipality, licensing, revenue sharing negotiations or conversations that we will wish to have with the province. If you've been following that, the federal government have provided a large percentage of the excise taxes to the provinces, partly with the intention that the provinces will deal directly with the municipalities. So that will be also a conversation and a process that we'll have with them. So as well as the enforcement of other aspects of it. And, our police department obviously is going to have a role to play, and we're not sure what all of those implications are yet. So there's a lot ahead of all of us in this particular issue as it sort of fans out across the country. And I didn't have another hand up yet. Councillor Reggio?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to support the motion. Simply, we can't keep our head buried in a snowbank. It's coming whether we like it or not. And the irony of all this is at the AMM meeting, once we met and left that room, expecting a few comments from our residents, and I have not received a single comment about this issue. So I don't know if it's a sign that residents are resigned to the fact this is going to happen, or they were just waiting to see what happens here tonight before the floodgates open. So I'll leave it at that.
Other comments? Councillor Brown?
I'm just going to vote against the motion. I'm just a little afraid of what we're saying to the young people, and the harm that could be done.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Cullen.
Yes, Your Worship, I will be supporting this motion. I think it's extremely important for the people around this table in the city of Brandon to be involved in the discussion that's going to follow over the next little while. To not be part of that process means we have absolutely no input whatsoever on what our opinion is or how this is going to fit into our community. Just the fact that that it will be legal and it could be purchased through the internet and have it delivered by the courier to our doorstep means that we're going to have to deal with it with our police department. We're going to have to deal with it with our non-smoking bylaw. We're going to have to deal with it with any other. You can't walk down the street with a beer in your hand right now because there's laws against that. We're going to have to adapt a lot of pieces of legislation, a lot of bylaws that we have in front of us right now. So That's the set of cards that we've been dealt. We're not being asked whether or not this is going to be legal. We're being asked that how it's going to be distributed if around in Brandon, Manitoba. And I, for one, would rather have the control or a little bit of a control on how that is done around schools and again, in respect to Councillor Brown, how our kids are exposed to it and like to be able to have that input on that legislation. So, or on our bylaws, at least at this level. So it's coming. We're going to have to deal with it, and so it's best that we're around the table.
See other hands up. I'll just weigh in and I won't repeat some of the comments that have already been made, but whether or not I'm fully in favor of the way that the federal government is rolling this out is irrelevant, but as it will become a legal substance throughout the country, and we know that it's very prevalent in our community now and in probably every community. And so what is prevalent right now, in my view, would be the equivalent to buying alcohol through the form of moonshine, just made up somewhere, and you don't really know what you're getting, what it's tainted with, what else it's laced with, and that's really the equivalent of the cannabis that's within any given community right now. And at least what is proposed will now become a legal, regulated, pure and proper, now the equivalent of the Manitoba Liquor Control Commission alcohol, that you would at least, know where it came from and what strength it is and all that sort of thing. So I think that piece of the equation may bring, greater safety to those that may wish to consume the product, and that alone may lead to a positive, safer community for us. But most of all, I'll be voting in favor of this particular motion, so that we do have a chip in the game, we do have a say in the process, and we do have a say in how it's controlled and where it's distributed within our own given community. Didn't see any other hands up, but I'll go back to letting the mover close. Councillor Fawcett.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you, if I can just take a minute, I'd like to repeat what everybody said. No, I won't. But it was just a yes or no that they were asking on us on this, so we will go with the yes. I think there will be opportunity to have lots of discussion on this. Obviously, there is pluses and minuses. The police chief is in the audience with us. He will, ever since we were in the newspaper, he's been like all over us. But, oh, that was too much, wasn't it? Yeah, a lot of comments on that. But we will be discussing it going forward. But this was the yes or no question that we were asked. It did come short notice. Some municipalities may not have been able to get it in. We're just sort of working with the province on this. So.
Okay, we're going to call for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
Considering of the motion raised by Councillor Chaboyer regarding the restoration of provincial 50-50 cost sharing of public transit.
Councillor Chaboyer.
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to make a motion that the province of Manitoba be requested to restore the 50-50 cost-sharing agreement for the City of Brandon Transit Services to ensure the stability of this critical public service.
Seconder, please. Councillor Patterson. Mover wish to speak.
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you. I was extremely concerned when I heard that we will no longer be receiving provincial funding. 50-50 agreement with the province, and my understanding is it amounts to about $227,000. That was confirmed to me from the Director of Transportation. And the reason I'm concerned that is a substantial amount of money to take out of that service. This service affects many residents. We have many students, seniors, people on limited incomes that use the transit service to navigate through our city, and we've always done it in an affordable way and try to provide the best service to them. And with this kind of reduction, it's definitely going to impact them. And so I think that it would be useful for us to have a conversation with the province to let them know how it is going to affect us. You know, it's one thing for them to just cut the funding, but they need to know how it's going to affect the City of Brandon residents. And it's also going to affect our taxpayers somewhere down the road if we want to ensure that we're providing an optimum service for the residents, that in order to keep it stable, that we might have to increase our contribution to ensure that it continues on. So I'm asking council support to write a letter to the province of Manitoba and just to express to them the concerns that we have about losing this service, because I just think that the transit service is important, not only for the residents, but it is a sustainable way of transporting yourself around the city, and it's something that we should be always providing for our citizens.
Thank you. Seconder wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I do want to note that that this 50-50 funding arrangement with the province was something that previous councillor that sat at this table, Errol Black, worked really hard to put in place, because there was a time, perhaps not so long ago, that the province didn't contribute to 50% of the operating costs of transit, which did cause a serious strain on the city budget. I think that municipalities are a creation of the province. Well, I don't think that. I know that. And as such, they do play a role in supporting us in delivering services to our residents at a reasonable level of property tax. That said, I also think that a robust transit system does help the province achieve some of their goals. And in writing this letter, we can encourage them to think about this. You know, we've heard a lot from the province about their Made in Manitoba climate change plan, and we know that getting more people using public transit over driving their vehicles is part of creating solutions when it comes to climate change. And you're not going to convince people to stop taking their vehicles if the bus service isn't convenient enough for them to take. And I think service reductions will reduce that viability of our transit system. I also think that the province, another policy goal is supporting low-income people. We know there was a decision to reduce the amount of support provided to people who are on rent assist, and some of these folks really do rely on the transit system to get to and from work. And so if you're seeing a reduction in some financial supports, perhaps coupled with an increase in transit fares, perhaps a reduction in service, that just makes life much more difficult for our citizens here in Brandon. I do think that this change on the specific 50-50 transit is being taken by the province in an effort to create more single basket funding for municipalities. I'm not entirely sold that that is the best way to go, because I do think these targeted investments do allow the province to try to achieve some policy goals, whether that be reducing climate change, having affordable ways to get around our communities. So I know as a council we tend to not like to tell other level orders of government how to make decisions, but I do think on this one it is important that we express our concern and encourage the province to restore the 50-50 cost sharing.
Okay. Any other? Councillor Reggio.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick comment. Writing a letter is nice. It gets read and then it gets filed. We get a response and it's forgotten. So I'm just wondering, will administration kind of do a follow-up, hopefully get an in-person meeting with a minister or a deputy minister to further discuss the issue as a follow-up to the letter?
Well, I'm not sure that'll be at the feet of administration. This is kind of at the political level would really be the probably the approach this is going to take. So that may, I didn't have another hand up, so I'll maybe segue that into my own comments. And so, well, I'm certainly sympathetic to the motion, or at least the what I feel is probably the spirit of the motion and the spirit of the comments that both Councillors Chaboyer and Patterson have made. I would also be concerned about the long-term sustainability. To make no mistake, let's not make it sound like the funding was cut. That was the sort of language they were using in Winnipeg. The funding is frozen, so we're getting support in the neighborhood of about $2 million towards our transit system from the province. Now, we had a good, robust session with our transit department the other night, and I think there's tweaks that we can make to, keep our transit system quite efficient and quite user-friendly and the like, but I would be certainly concerned that we would not be able to do that long-term into the future. I'm not sure if the province feels that we can do that long-term into the future either. So I would certainly be very much in favor of having discussions with the province about what their intentions are, what can we do to work together to, sort of what level can we collectively be at. Because I think that the big issue, the number one phrase in the previous agreement is the 50-50 cost sharing, which I know the province had always felt was a bit of a blank check, like that they couldn't really budget for it, they didn't really have any control over it. It's just kind of like however these transit departments operated, how they fared throughout the year, at kind of the end of the year. Municipalities, and let's face it, the main ones are Winnipeg, very big transit department, very big need for assistance, and then Brandon certainly is significant, not nearly as significant as Winnipeg, and the province had a difficult time just kind of budgeting for this, so it was a bit of a blank check on their part, and they were feeling like they can't continue on that basis. I can understand that rationale. We operate the same way with our departments and all of the other organizations that are asking for funding from the city. We keep parameters on them and say, well, this is your budget for the year, and we can budget for that. So I would certainly be all for having the discussions with the province in a constructive fashion. And I don't think that Councillor Chaboyer's motion is to not be constructive. I just feel that just asking to kind of flat out ask them to just restore the 50-50 agreement isn't going to take us too far, and I think more constructive discussions with them will I think be appreciated by both parties in this case. So, Councillor Desjardins.
Your Worship, point of order, our question. Are we allowed to friendly amend the language then to support something in the lines of what the mayor is proposing? I was thinking something like that the province of Manitoba, that we request to enter into discussions to establish a fair and equitable cost-sharing agreement for the City of Brandon transit system.
That would be an amendment.
Yeah, that would be an amendment. It wouldn't be a friendly amendment. You can just make the amendment.
Can I make that amendment?
Yeah. Do you want to just say that again? I like most of that wording there.
That the province of Manitoba be requested to enter into discussions with the City of Brandon to establish a fair and equitable cost-sharing agreement for Brandon Transit Services to ensure the stability of this public service.
And could you add the word sustainable in there?
Did I not use that?
Yeah, fair and equitable.
Fair, equitable, and sustainable. I like threes. That's good.
Well, I think that's what we're all looking for.
I'm with you. Yeah.
If there's a second or amendment, Councillor Cullen. You've probably already spoken to it, but go ahead if you want to elaborate on that, Councillor Desjardins.
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Cullen, do you want to speak to the amendment?
Just that sometimes when there may be offsets or there may be other things that are in the works, and I'm not saying that I know of any of those, but I'm just saying that I'd like to hear from the province as far as they know that it costs money to do these things. They understand the process, so they may have some other offsets or other processes that they have in play. And so it would be nice to have that conversation with them again and sort of figure out where they're thinking, because again, this stuff is not free, and come budget time, if we do not have the money that we need, we're going to have to find cuts somewhere, or reduction in hours of service or something, because it'll be all left on us. So again, I don't have a problem with contacting and having a discussion with the province as far as what they expect from us and what we expect from them.
Other discussions on the amendment? I'm not sure if Councillor Chaboy wanted to say that if you feel like we're sort of gutting your motion there at all, but hopefully.
So you're not. Thank you, Worship. I think that you're enhancing the motion and moving the discussion forward with the province is the right way to go with this. I think that they need to hear our concerns, and the way it's newly worded will allow us to do that, because I feel that we missed the AMM convention to have a discussion on this at a resolution level, and I know that the province right now is going around having hearings and want to talk to have consultations on ways to reduce poverty and the quality of life for people on fixed incomes, and this just starts the conversation. So I'm very pleased to hear that there's other concerns expressed from yourself and other councillors that we should have a conversation with them about this.
Good. Glad to hear you feel that way. Any other discussions on the amendment? If not, we're going to call the questions on the amendment then. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That is carried. Go back to the main motion as amended. Any other discussion? Mover wish to close?
Thank you, Worship. I think I covered it all under the amendment.
Very good. Then we're going to call for the question as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
A motion to adopt the 2018 interim budget.
Now we have a variety of kind of housekeeping items that have to do at year end, so we'll fly through those. Councillor Reggio.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that pursuant to Section 163 of the Municipal Act, the following interim budget to provide for City of Brandon expenditures, revenues, and transfers for the year 2018 be adopted. Do you want me to read that?
You'll probably just say as listed.
As listed.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Fawcett. Mover wish to speak?
No, perhaps we could have the treasurer explain what this is all about.
Well, it's kind of in a nutshell. Go ahead, Councillor Fawcett.
Yeah, through your worship, this is a annual Section 163 of the Municipal Act authorizing that we adopt an interim budget as we're going through our budget. So the proposed figures are based on the draft budget to be deliberated by City Council on January 16th or 19th and 20th. So our next step in this process is to hold a public hearing on the financial plan. There'll be a schedule to be held at a regular City Council meeting March 5th, 2018. Final education levy requisitions will not be known at the time, as they have a legislative deadline on March 15th. So essentially this is just that interim every year because we don't have a budget in place January 1.
Allows us to continue to operate until we do have a budget passed. Everybody clear on that? Okay, call for the question. You okay, Councillor Reggio?
Yeah, it sounds like we found a salary where we can save.
Okay. We're going to call for the question then with the little commentary. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item, please.
A motion regarding the 2018 borrowing for the City of Brandon.
Lee. Councillor Fawcett.
Yes, thank you, through your worship. That pursuant to Section 173(1) of the Municipal Act, the borrowing of funds from the Bank of Montreal for general operating expenses not exceeding $10,350,000 be authorized, and further that these funds only be used to generate general operating expenses in the 2018 fiscal year, and all sums borrowed pursuant to this resolution be supported by a change upon the whole of the revenues of the municipality.
Charge upon the whole. Yeah. Seconder, please. Councillor Reggio. Who wishes to speak?
Yes, thank you, through your worship. Same thing, this is an annual piece that the council does have to do this. It has to be less than the total amount of taxes collected that we have set up. Of course, last year, taxes and grants in lieu of taxes was $89 million. Our operating line of credit, I don't believe has changed year over year, $10,350,000. We don't often use this. It is just a short-term requirements in the case that we don't wish to liquidate particular investments and such. So it occurs annually. We don't use it very often.
Well said. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, call for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item, please.
Appointment of the chair and vice chair to the Brandon Police Board.
Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Worship, that in accordance with the City of Brandon bylaw number 7041, the following appointments as chair and vice chair of the Brandon Police Board be and are hereby made with the terms of office to expire as indicated. Mark Frazon, chair, term to expire October 25th, 2018. Mayor Rick Quest, vice chair, term to expire October 25th, 2018.
Seconder, please. Councillor Parker. Any discussion? Sorry, mover wish to speak?
Just real briefly, Your Worship. In accordance with the Section 32(1) Act of Police Services Act, City of Brandon bylaw number 7041, City Council must designate one member of the Police Board as chair and one as vice chair. It was agreed upon these appointments would be made on an annual basis. The members of the Police Board met on December 4th and wish to submit their recommendations for these positions for 2018. And seeing that Mayor Rick and Mark Frazon didn't show up for the meeting, they were two nominees that got appointed. So,
I wanted to nominate people that failed to show to the meeting, but didn't work that way. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item, please.
Appointments to the Board of Revision for 2018.
Councillor Fawcett.
Thank you, through your worship, that the following citizen appointments be and are hereby made to the Board of Revisions for one-year terms of office to commence January 1st, 2018, expire December 31st, 2018. Ken Zogan with the chair, Don Cornell, Wally Peter Geiler, and Matthew May.
Seconder, please. Councillor Brown, mover wish to speak?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is annual, according to the provisions of Municipal Assessment Act, and I don't know how many we had. I will note in here, on our notes here, that Mr. Don Cornell, chair of the board for the last 11 years, has advised that he will be stepping down from the board 2018. So Kenneth Zogan, has the member of Board of Revisions for 2 years, is being recommended to chair the board for the upcoming year. So
yeah, so nice transition there.
Yeah.
Mr. Cornell is going to stay on board,
yeah,
while the other Mr. Zogan takes over. So, any discussion? Seeing none, call for the question. That is carried. Next item, please.
The citizen appointments to the Municipal Heritage Advisory Committee.
Councillor Harwood.
Yes, Your Worship, I move that the following appointment of citizen representatives be and are hereby made to the Brandon Municipal Heritage Advisory Committee, with terms of office beginning January 1, 2018 and expiring December 31, 2018. Catherine Hill, Matthew May, Murray Fletcher. And further, that the appointment of citizen representatives be and are hereby made with terms of office beginning January 1, 2018 and expiring December 31, 2019, Gary Miller, Greg Hutzel, and Reg Hildebrand.
Seconder, please. Councillor Chaboyer, mover wish to speak?
Just very briefly, Your Worship, this was a reorg on the Municipal Heritage Advisory Committee. We didn't want all the board representatives their terms expiring at the same time, so we made adjustments to the bylaw, which will allow for staggered terms here.
Thank you. It should also be noted, especially for the benefit of the public, that in most cases, most of these boards that council makes appointments to are advertised to the public, and we do get nice gathering of people that submit and put in for them, and that is very much appreciated. So it is quite an open process. And Councillor Girardi.
Through your worship, I'm just struggling with my numbers. The three that are currently represented on MHAC are Greg Miller, Greg Hutzel, and Reg Hildebrand. So they would be finishing up their second year this year, correct? Or I'm just trying to, because the other ones are only there for a year?
If I may, Your Worship. There was a lag in the appointments because of the reorganization of the MHAC bylaw.
Okay.
And so there was a year that went by where there was the current appointments were just carried over for another year. There was no appointments made last year, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
So those continued through the year until they got the committee bylaw reorganized. And so now we're going into the staggered terms again. So it's almost like we're starting fresh again with the appointments. So Mr. Hutzel and Miller and Hildebrand will be a 2-year term. The first 3 are a 1-year term, and then when their terms are up, they will become 2-year terms following that.
Okay, that's a good explanation. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item, please.
The citizen appointments to the Poverty Committee, Your Worship.
Councillor Chaboyer.
Thank you, Worship. I move that the following citizen appointment is hereby made to the Poverty Committee for a 2-year term of office to commence January 1, 2018 and expire December 31st, 2019. James Chambers.
Seconder, please. Councillor Patterson. Again, mover wish to speak.
No, Your Worship.
Anybody else? Again, another one of the appointments, so we'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item, please.
The citizen appointments to the Age Friendly Committee, Your Worship.
Councillor Brown.
That the following citizen appointments be and are hereby appointed to the Age Friendly Committee for 2-year terms of office beginning January 1st, 2018 and expiring December 31st, 2019. They are John Faulkner, Merle Lynn Orth, and Pamela Stacy.
Seconder, please. Councillor Parker. Mover wish to speak.
No.
Seconder.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the question on these appointments. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item, please.
The last of the appointments is to the Brandon General Museum and Archives.
Councillor Brown again.
That the following 2-year term citizen appointments be and are hereby made to the Brandon General Museum and Archives Board for the term of office to commence January 1st, 2018 and expire on December 31st, 2019. They're Barbara Andrew, Brent Chamberlain, Greg Steele, Sky Tody, and Tyler Warren.
Seconder, please. Councillor Reggio. Again, mover wish to speak.
No.
Seconder.
Just quickly, Your Worship, all 5 are returning board members.
Good to know. Any other discussion? Councillor
Worship,
Chaboyer.
I'd like to abstain from this vote because my husband is on that list.
That's fine. You don't have to leave the chamber. Just let it be known that Councillor Chaboyer will be abstaining on the voting. So we're going to call for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried with 1 abstention. Next item, please.
A motion regarding extension to the Public Transit Infrastructure Fund.
Councillor Harwood.
Yes, Your Worship, I'd move the following. Whereas the City of Brandon has applied for cost-sharing funding under the Public Transit Infrastructure Fund for handy transit bus replacement and diesel exhaust fluid bulk filling stations, and whereas notification of the PTIF funding of these projects was received on February 28, 2017, and whereas the City of Brandon attests that due to manufacturing delays, these projects may not be completed in full by March 31st, 2018. Now therefore be it resolved that the City of Brandon requests an extension of the deadline to March 31st, 2019 for the completion of the handy transit bus replacement and diesel exhaust fluid bulk tank filling station projects.
Seconder, please. Councillor Parker. Mover wish to speak.
Your Worship, I'm just wondering maybe if we might have Carla Richardson come up and just give us a background and an overview on the details behind the motion, please.
Thank you. Welcome, Carla.
Good evening, Your Worship, Council. The resolution tonight is required in the event that the PTIF projects, one for the handy bus replacement and one for the DEF filling station, in case they don't arrive, and all invoices have to be paid by March 31st of 2018. And there has been quite a rush on handy buses, so the supplier isn't sure whether or not they're going to come, and there's just some uncertainty there, and I would hate to put ourselves at risk, so we're going to apply for the extension and be safe rather than find out the hard way that we don't meet the deadline.
Any questions of Carla Richardson? Excellent explanation. Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item, please.
Under the order of bylaws, Your Worship, bylaw number 7191, which is an amendment to the parking enforcement bylaw, and second and third readings are recommended.
Would like to be the mover. Councillor Fawcett.
Thank you. Through your worship, that bylaw number 7191 to amend parking enforcement bylaw number 7167 with respect to including the schedule of fines for parking-related offenses be read a second time.
Seconder, please. Mr. Barry, who wishes to speak?
Thank you, Your Worship. There's not extensive changes that I see in there. I don't know if someone wants to speak to them, but they're nothing. Well, maybe it's best we have somebody speak to them. Maybe she's going to explain they're much more extensive than I realize. I don't know.
Our Director of all things legal, Vicky Fifi.
Through you, Your Worship. The amendment is largely to take the fine schedule or the fine schedule out of the fee schedule and move it into the parking compliance bylaw. Just a realignment.
Very good. Any questions while Vicky is still before us? Thank you very much. Back to the mover. Anything further?
So through your worship, this is more or less just what we'd consider our house cleaning. It was addressed to us earlier how we were going to do this.
Right. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the question on second reading. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Third reading would be in order. Councillor Fawcett.
Yes, thank you. Through your worship, that the bylaw be read a third and final time.
Seconder, please. Councillor Barry. Any discussion? Seeing none, third reading requires a recorded vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried unanimously. Next item, please.
Bylaw number 7194, which is the rezoning of property located at 701 17th Street East from development reserve to industrial general zone.
Councillor Chaboyer.
Thank you, Worship. I move that bylaw 7194 to rezone a property located at 701 17th Street East from development reserve zone to industrial general zone be read a second time.
And then do we add the second one? The third reading be held?
That could be a separate motion.
Okay. Seconder on the reading of the second reading.
Out tonight.
Councillor Patterson. Who wishes to speak on this one? Well, we're going to be withholding third reading with respect to some conditions, so we may have greater discussion at that time when it comes back to third
then we'll
reading.
save it for the other part. No.
All right, we're going to call for the question on second reading then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And that second partial, the third reading be held in abeyance.
I move that third reading of this bylaw be held in abeyance pending the applicant enter into a development agreement subject to the following conditions. Do you want me to read them all out?
Yeah, quite likely, probably as listed, and then maybe read that and further that.
And further, that administration be authorized to prepare a development agreement containing all conditions and requirements to protect the city's interests in accordance with any procedures, policies, bylaws, and acts.
Seconder, please. Councillor Patterson. Do we wish to discuss this? It will be coming back for third reading. If we pass this, we'll be holding third reading in abeyance, at which time we'll be able to discuss it on third reading. We're good with that? I'm going to call for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item, please.
Bylaw number 7195, which is an amendment to the Southwest Brandon Secondary Plan Bylaw 7080, and first reading is recommended.
Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Worship. I move that bylaw number 7195 to amend Southwest Brandon Secondary Plan Bylaw number 7080 by replacing Schedule A there to be read a first time.
Seconder, please. Councillor Lareggio. Again, first reading just gets it on the table, no debate. Call for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item, please.
Bylaw number 7196, which is the 2018 fee schedule, and I would note there is an amendment being recommended prior to third and final reading.
Good. Who wants to wade into this one? Councillor Parker, go ahead.
Bylaw number 7196 to adopt the annual schedule of fees for services, activities of things provided by the City of Brandon for the year 2018 be amended by deleting page 13 of Schedule A with respect to fees for the Sportsplex pool and substituting the attached therefore as page 13 of Schedule A.
Seconder, please. Councillor Barry.
Sorry, Your Worship, I actually wanted to add a further amendment to that, please.
I think we, if I may, Your Worship, I think we should do each amendment separately, please.
We'll deal with this. Now, so that I didn't want to put words in your mouth. You weren't seconding that motion then?
For you, I will, yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, do we need anybody up to answer any questions with respect to this First Amendment regarding the Sportsplex fees? Everybody good with them, or do you want some explanation? It's looking like we're good, or we're just still studying. That's fine, too.
If I may, Your Worship?
Right.
The amendment being proposed is just there's been a realignment of the Red Cross life-saving courses from the former Bronze Star, Bronze Cross, and so we just made that adjustment in the fee schedule to eliminate the formerly recognized programs and put in the new rates for the new rates under the Red Cross system. So it's basically a housekeeping.
For that, based on that, we're ready for the question on this amendment. And we'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Now we are open for further amendments. If there are other things in the fee schedule. Councillor Barry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move an amendment to page 11, the transit fee schedule, to read the 2008 proposed adult cash fare be $1.50, adult 10 ride fare be $13.50, adult 30-day pass be $84.25, the youth senior cash fare be $1.25, and the youth senior 10 ride be $11.25, and the youth senior 30-day pass be $47.
Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Reggio. Now, and I think Council will be aware that following the meeting that we did have to go over this, administration did sort of collate that and send out to council a new potential proposed schedule, and Councillor Barry has moved precisely that, so it was on paper if you all saw that earlier, but let's carry on. Would you like to move, speak to that?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Worship. The fee schedule adjustment is based on our meeting we had a week ago with Director of Transportation and Management from the transit itself, discussing, well, mostly the funding cuts because of the change in the funding model from the province and then the kind of the challenges we face with losing that amount of money in 1 year. Some options we faced, of course, are cutting service. Others are raising fees. By doing this raise of fees, it's raising an additional revenue, potentially, of $61,000 to offset that $230,000 deficit, about roughly 25%. So it certainly doesn't cover the whole loss we're seeing, but it's taken a bit of a bite out of it, and that's based on as long as our ridership numbers stay the same. If we lose ridership numbers, that realization of the revenue isn't going to come in. But it's a necessary step to try and offset the costs because we don't have that guarantee of the historic funding we've had in the past for the province where it's going to change. So we need to do something or it's going to be cut services, and I feel this is just one step. At the recommendation of the administration from Transit and that we did have this discussion. This was our recommendation, and I'm certainly in agreement with it, and I hope council is as well.
Seconder wish to speak?
Briefly, Your Worship, I know earlier we heard about the hardships that some of the lower income folks are going to have, but this is something I think somebody's going to have to swallow, because the hardship they could face is not having transit at all. So you're caught between this and that. So hopefully this will be some kind of a compromise until we have the discussions with the province and see if they'll come back on board with increased funding.
Another discussion. Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you, through your worship. I think this is one of the more challenging things that council has faced, because we could also be shooting ourselves in the foot by raising transit. We could have lower ridership. We could end up having reduced money coming in. And so I think it's a tough thing to find that to strike that balance for an appropriate fare. And I would certainly agree that I'd venture to guess that it's close to 90% of the people who use transit are low-income families. So we are faced with a difficult choice, and we are trying to balance things out. And we have a challenging budget coming ahead of us. So I think we've tried to strike the right balance. I am going to vote in favor of it grudgingly, because I wish we didn't have to do it. And I hope that we don't see a reduction in use, and that it's not too much of an impact on those who need to use this service the most. But I will say that I've been listening to some of the stories out there from folks. Even a nickel increase can be a challenge, and not all of us live like that. So we don't really grasp the severity of these kinds of increases to people who use this on a daily basis. But I think this was a tough one, and I will grudgingly go ahead with approving this motion.
Other discussion, Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just quickly, if I could ask Mr. Richardson maybe if she can tell us if historically, when there are fare increases put in place, do we see a dip in ridership, and then subsequently do we see that number rebound again to previous levels, or where do we see that go?
Through your worship, to Councillor Parker, I didn't bring the exact stats, but it's been a while since we have had an increase that has been outside of the traditional 2-3%. The last time that we really adjusted our fares was when we removed the transfer, and it had very little impact on the ridership then. Fare increases are, as Councillor Desjardins said, they're tricky, and the elasticity of the fare and what you set the fares at, it does play with the ridership. One of the things that we're going to do is we've continued to track, since the new routes have been implemented, continued to track our ridership and the route performance, and we're going to make that commitment to continue to do so and provide the updates on a regular basis and make the system as efficient and as reliable and as safe as we can, and hopefully the ridership will stay with us.
Just quickly, I guess, for a good follow-up of the comment. I mean, I would agree with Councillor Desjardins that any increases in these things are tough, but I think we've known for a year or two now that some of these challenges are coming home to roost, and we're going to have to find ways to deal with them. And everybody's going to have to pitch in on this one, I think, and I agree with Chris that I too would vote in favor of this, but begrudgingly.
Thank you. Maybe don't go away, Carla, in case there's other questions. I have Councillor Patterson next.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm going to vote against this. I was comfortable with the modest increases proposed in the original fee schedule. I really do. I struggle with a much more significant increase. I do worry that on the heels of such a significant change in our system, that this could have a pretty negative impact. I also know that with the changes that have happened, some people are finding that they are transferring where they hadn't transferred before, which means they're paying a second fare both ways. And as somebody that used to ride transit, I used to have to pay that double fare because I would get on at the end of the route. And even though the bus route continued on to where I needed to go, I actually had to get onto a different bus at the bus mall, which resulted in me paying a second fare. So I think this sort of bigger increase is going to negatively impact people individually, and I just think that I'm going to vote against it.
Other speakers? Have any other hands up? Okay, thank you, Carla. So we're back to the amendment. Mover wish to close.
Thank you, Worship. Certainly agree with my fellow councillors. This is not an easy thing to do. It's one of those tough decisions that nobody likes to make. Realization is we still have to find another $160,000 to offset the loss we're taking from the funding from the province. This is only a very small portion of it. This is a recommendation by our administration that these are the fees that's set up based on our meeting from last Monday. I don't always follow the recommendations of administration, but on this one I'm going to, just because of the amount it's going to hit the budget and that. So I do hope the council will support it going forward until maybe we can have a conversation with the province.
Very good. I'm going to call for the question then on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. We're still open for any other amendments. If there are other pieces of the fee schedule that people were wanting to work on, now would be the time. The others? Therefore, we can move third reading as amended, which will encompass both of the amendments we've made so far. So somebody make that motion, please. Councillor Patterson? You're making the...
Yes, I am making the motion, sorry. The third as amended, sorry.
Yep, thank you. A seconder, please. Good, so I got Councillor Reggio, and very good. Any discussion on the motion as amended? What's being included in that is that Sportsplex amendment that was first made, then the transit amendment that was just made, and that everything else will be stand as originally presented in the bylaw. No further discussion then. We're going to call for the question. Once again, third reading requires a recorded vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item, please.
Giving of notice, Your Worship.
What you did. Giving of notice. Appears to be none. Next item, please.
A motion to adjourn would be in order, Your Worship.
Councillor Barry and Councillor Chaboyer. And before I call for the question, everybody stay around. We're going to gather around and treat the public to our dubious singing skills. All those in favor of adjournment? That is carried. Gather around for the new song. I have no idea what that means. We'll have to get Jarley to do that.
I was trying to get the back, but they never let me.
All right, this is good. We only have two verses.
The logout thing is. I always try to do the logout, yeah.
Yeah.
One verse?
So,
Maybe that's why I didn't go down far enough.
Next to the mayor here.
snuggle in there, Johnny.
It's Christmas. One of these options.
I didn't
All right, we're
ask
gonna,
him, I was so stupid.
let the one,
Right here?
Knock up here.
could the city manager ask
Well, maybe
Councilor
this little
Boye to
guy.
join us? Since she's,
She's got a soul.
she has a Christmas attire as well. Look at that nice red. We'll let the most accomplished singer we have, Councillor DeJarley, pick a key and lead us off.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh. O'er the fields we go, laughing all the way. Bells on bobtail ring, making spirits bright. What fun it is to ride and sing in a sleighing song tonight. Oh, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. A day or two ago, I thought I'd take a ride, and soon Miss Fanny Bright was seated by my side. The horse was lean and lank, misfortune seemed its lot. He got into a drifted bank and we got all upsot. Oh, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Well done, gang.